Good evening and welcome to the commemorative area of the Australian War Memorial for this special last post ceremony. My name is Jennifer Surtees. Shortly, a member of the Australian Defence Force who is currently deployed overseas will read tonight's story. We would like to acknowledge the veterans who have served, those that are still serving and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who continue to watch the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the Australian National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Now we will hear the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century.
Good evening, my name is Kaylee Fletcher and I'm currently serving with the Royal Australian Navy. Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Edward George Hazel. Edward Hazel was a Waka Waka man, born in Gayndah, Queensland on the 13th of March 1925 to Sydney and Hetty Hazel. Hazel, known by the nickname of Toadie, grew up in Gayndah and attended Gayndah State School, which at the time was a small school with one teacher. He left school after gaining his primary education. The family moved to Biggenden, where Hazel did a variety of jobs from a young age, working variously as a stockman and drover, farmhand, and road worker. He loved sporting activities, particularly rugby league, at which he excelled. Hazel was living at home and working as a farm labourer when he decided to join the army. He travelled to Brisbane and on the 25th of January 1951 enlisted in the Australian Regular Army for a period of 6 years. After an initial posting as a kitchen hand, Hazel was sent to 11 National Service Training Battalion to undergo initial training as a soldier. On the 19th of April 1952, Hazel married Gloria Dawn Davis at Urangan. In September, he was posted to the 4th Training Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, for training as an infantryman. Hazel only had one blemish on his service record. He was found absent without leave during an afternoon in late June, returning to camp early the following morning. He was fined £1 and confined to barracks for 3 days for his trouble. In mid-February, Hazel was posted as reinforcement for service in Korea. He had only recently become a father with the birth of his son, Edward. After flying out of Sydney, he spent several months at the Reinforcement Holding Unit in Japan, where he received further training in preparation for frontline service. He arrived in Korea on the 2nd of June and joined the 3rd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, the following day. A little over a week later, Hazel wrote to his parents to tell them that he was over in Korea at last, and that the battalion was under notice to go up the front. He was nervous about his first experience of frontline service, but tried to reassure his parents, telling them, "I suppose it will be okay after I get used to it." He mentioned his wife and son, telling his parents that Gloria and the baby are coming to stay, although he was not sure when. A few days later, in the early hours of the 25th of June, the third anniversary of the start of the Korean War, a 3 RAR standing patrol in no man's land was overrun by a larger Chinese force. 2 men were killed and another wounded, but Hazel was not listed amongst the casualties. The battalion had been under heavy shell fire throughout the day and suffered several more casualties. It is likely that he was in 3 RAR's position on Hill 159 when he was struck in the head by shrapnel, suffered a compound fracture of the skull, and was killed instantly. His remains were taken to Busan, where on 14th of July he was laid to rest with full military honours in the United Nations Cemetery at Busan. Edward Hazel was 28 years old. His name is listed here on the Roll of Honour among the 340 soldiers, sailors and airmen who died during the Korean War. This is one but many of the stories of service and sacrifice told at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Edward George Hazel, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for watching and wish you all a very good evening.